So cool. So then, what was it like? What were some of the career paths that you took to become the collections manager at the San Diego Natural History Museum?
Yeah, so actually, I finished my degree. I went to UC Santa Cruz and finished and came back home. Um, I wanted to be a zookeeper for a while, so I was applying to a bunch of zoo jobs, but those are very competitive jobs to get like right out of the gate of graduating as undergrad. So I volunteered at the San Diego Natural History Museum in the Herpetology department. That's really where I made a lot of connections. So I volunteered for about 2 years working with Brad Hollingsworth, who's the curator. So it's like come full circle because now he's my boss. Just working on projects to renovate the collection. So right now we have 76,000 specimens in our wet collection. And, we were working to put them in new jars. So I was learning a lot about local herpetofauna, reptiles and amphibians. Um, and so that was a really, you know, mind-opening experience because I met a lot of people who were professors locally and graduate students who were working with Brad. And so I got a lot of experience in the field. It exposed me to a lot of different things. And then from that, I made a connection, because I'd worked with amphibians before when I was in college, that they were hiring at the San Diego Zoo in the research department. And I got a job there and worked there for 9 years. And then so I worked with amphibian conservation. That's where I really got a lot of experience. And then did some different jobs, left the zoo, and then came back to the field again and working in the museum. And I'm working on a really exciting project with California red-legged frogs right now. So I'm continuing my amphibian journey and also expanding it because, to be honest, when I was like, how old was I when I was 23 or 24 when I was volunteering at the museum, and I didn't really appreciate the collection like I do now. Just because I've had so many more experiences on the utility of the collection, and it's really amazing because we have 76,000 specimens, and we get requests from people to take these specimens out of the jars. They're most of them are in alcohol preserved, and then we pack them up in these special little plastic bags to soak them in alcohol so they don't dry up, and we send them to researchers, and they have all these interesting questions that they can ask and they're looking at all these different um, research ideas, and so we'll send them off. So it's really cool to know how they're used regularly.
Yeah, no, and that's fascinating because I know that's one of the questions that we like to ask a lot of our collections managers is like, what is the value of our collection? Where is it? How is it incorporated into a current research that's happening? So thank you so much for bringing that up and mentioning that. Is there any kind of research that has come up in recent times that's exciting? We're definitely are going to circle back to the red-legged frogs. You alluded to it. We're definitely going to come back to it. But is there any current research that's happening that ties to our collection that has you excited because it's either with amphibians or with reptiles, like within your realm? Is there anything that stands out?
I'd say there's a couple things. There's one project that was completed before I started, but it's a really good example of the use of the collection. So the um, California red-legged frog there's preserved specimens, and other amphibian species there's also preserved. And so a researcher came in and took swabs and swabbed all the specimens, and she was looking for chytrid fungus, so looking for signs and DNA of this chytrid fungus, which has devastated amphibians all throughout the world. And so she was looking to see if there's a pattern of when you start to detect chytrid fungus. So each specimen that we have has a record of where it was found, when it was found, all those details. And then she was able to kind of come up with a timeline of when chytrid fungus started being present in that population, and then correlating when the fungus started to be detected with when the die-offs were first noted. You can use that information to determine whether chytrid fungus likely played a role in those declines. So it's a really cool way to use these animals that no one even had described chytrid fungus till 1999. But these specimens were collected in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and you start to see this pattern in the 70s and 80s where the chytrid fungus starts to be detected. And so then we know that the die-offs were likely caused by that chytrid fungus because that's when a lot of the frogs were dying. That's a really cool example.
Yeah, no, that's super fascinating because it does. It shows how much we have preserved in our collection that is still yet to be discovered. So it is impressive. And you mentioned the California red-legged frog, and I know that we're catching you after having returned back from a trip to Baja, specifically for the California regular frog. So would you like to share with our members, maybe catch us up on a little bit of what was happening or what you were doing in terms of the California red-legged frog?
Yeah, sure. So I'm definitely feeling very accomplished after this last trip because it was our last survey of this field season for California red-legged frog eggs down in Baja California. We work it's a 6-hour drive from the museum.
Mhm.
So it's past Ensenada, and then we go up into the windy road up into the mountains and the foothills, about 2,000 to 3,000 foot elevation for our field sites. And our main goal was to, document and understand the population health of the California red-legged frogs based on egg production. So last year in 2020, we were able to figure out the protocols. We kind of, honed everything in and do surveys every week for about 12 weeks. We were out there looking for these frog eggs. So we drive down there every week and do these surveys. And we found 20 frog eggs at one of the sites last year. And this year we just finished and we found a total of 35 at that same site. So the 75%
Yeah.
increase in the number of eggs. So and we recently collaborated with a group down there, a nonprofit called Fano, of Mexican biologists, that we built these deep ponds for the frogs, and they've been using them to help them reproduce more readily. And so we're seeing that benefit from building those ponds already with that increase. So it's really exciting to see those results. And walking up a creek and looking for frog eggs is so freaking cool. Like the viewscapes down there are amazing. It's kind of like like San Diego if there wasn't as much development. It's just open, beautiful landscape, and the mountain range is often covered in snow. So it's a really, really cool site. And then we're learning so much about the populations there. And even though they're increasing, there's only 10 streams or ponds in Baja California that have California red-legged frogs. So imagine all of this species in Baja California, there's only 10 places. So each of those, if one of those blinks out, it's a risk of extinction in the long run. So we're trying to work to build more ponds and increase the resilience of these populations. So the ponds help by providing a more stable source of water by digging lower to the water table so that the frogs can survive and that their tadpoles have enough time to metamorphose.
Yeah. So when you're going out into the pond, what exactly are you looking for? Because I'm imagining frog eggs are going to be really small, and you can't just. I mean, when you're walking, is there something that you're looking at the environment to identify? Okay, that's where maybe we can like find some egg masses, or are you like snorkeling in the pond trying to find these egg masses?
No, that's a great question. We have these really goofy looking waders that we put on. And so, we trounce around in these waders and to keep us warm and dry. And then when we're out there, the egg mass is like, the size of larger than a grapefruit. It's, a small egg mass is the size of grapefruit. A large egg mass is, a little bit bigger than a large grapefruit. So they're pretty big and they're usually laid close to the surface of the water. And the water is really, really clear. So we go and we look, just wherever we can. And from our data that we collected, we've learned that they tend to lay eggs in deep pockets. So there's a pattern there where in deeper areas is where the frogs tend to lay their eggs within the stream. So if it's a really shallow area, we just kind of walk through very quickly, and we're still scanning, but we know that there's less likely to be eggs there. The ponds are a little bit more challenging. So there's stream habitat and pond habitat. The ponds there's really, really deep pockets and they're full of really thick cattails in some areas. So it takes a long time. It's like literally looking through a needle in a haystack. You kind of like pushing beside the cattails and peeking down. And sometimes the conditions are challenging because it's raining and cloudy sometimes. And when the rain falls on the pond water, it creates a ripple and we can't really have good visibility. So, we always watch where we step is the key, right? Don't take a step before looking ahead. And most of the time though, the eggs are within like 20 centimeters of the surface of the water. Sometimes they're right on the top. So it's like looking for tapioca pudding in a pudding
Oh,
balls
wow.
or something, right? Like these
Yeah.
tiny little eggs, but they're all clumped together and it's this bundle of eggs that's pretty visible usually.
That's exciting stuff. I could picture it now, and I'm sure there's going to be some amazing photos that are going to come out of this, and I'm sure they'll be posted on our website once we get a little bit more details out on in writing and in one of our science blogs. I think that that'll be
Uh,
definitely something
yeah, I'm hoping to
that will come
blog
out.
on it. And I've written a couple blogs already, so if you guys are interested, you can check that out.
Awesome. So I think we could definitely have Emily plug that in, and she could show you where you could find more details if you don't already have those readily accessible to our members. But on the topics of specimens and the collection, if you were to give someone a behind the scenes tour, Frank, of our collections, is there a favorite? And I know it's kind of tough to identify a favorite specimen or a favorite
Uh-huh.
subject that you would like to show, or you would like your go-to item that you say, if I'm giving someone a tour, I cannot let them leave without seeing this one thing that you think is really important and valuable to you. What would that be? What would be your favorite collection item piece, if you have one?
That it definitely is hard to pick a favorite, and I've been doing this for 2 years. And collection is a big part of our role, but we also do a lot of field work, so we're spending a lot of time in the field. But I would say my favorite is just this really cool story of a California king snake. So it's a California king snake, but it's not just one animal that's in this with this California king snake. It's like a double whammy on it. It's actually has a dead horn lizard inside of its mouth. So
Wow.
it was collected because someone found it. It had died. The snake had killed the horn lizard and tried to swallow it, but the horns on the horn lizard punctured the throat of the
Wow.
snake, and the snake died. So it's a 2-for-1 special
Yeah.
on. And I mean, just seeing that just talks about the ecology of the animal, right? There's so much
Yeah.
story there. It's not just this dead animal, but it's telling a story. And so I think any specimen where we have, you also walk through and you'll find slits in the stomachs and body cavities of the specimens, and that's because someone did some research on it. So anything where you can find out something about like what the animal ate or any other use, I think that's what makes it a valuable specimen. And looking at that one, it's a cool story. So yeah,
Yeah, I can imagine, walking through and you're like, oh, by the way, you can't leave without seeing this thing, and then sharing that story with anyone that
yeah,
wants to listen to it. It's just so fascinating to see that those kind of stories exist in our
yeah,
collections, that are sometimes rarely seen. So thank you for
uh-huh,
bringing that
yeah.
out, and again sharing that story with our members. And we were kind of talking about the different paths that you took to becoming our collections manager at the museum. And I think one of the things I glazed over was the fact that you've only been with the museum for 2 years. I think you and I kind of have a similar time start from when we began at the museum. So all this work that's been happening, Frank, congratulations. It's in 2 years, all these
Thank
accomplishments
you.
have happened. So thank you so much for all your efforts that you bring to the museum. Um, on that kind of note, is there any kind of mentors, or what roles do mentors play for your career, or for just
Mhm.
becoming involved with museums or science? I know that's something that's a lot of times it's really interesting to find out is the roles of mentors, and how what kind
Mhm.
of influence they've had on your trajectory.
Yeah, I, I I described myself as pretty shy when I was first going to school and college. It was very overwhelming. I was the first generation college student, so it was challenging. And I think the things that helped me find mentors are, just taking a class and having that opportunity. Like in my herpetology class, our professor came up and said, like, if anyone wants to work on this project, come see me. And like, when I get offered something like that, and I'm very likely to say yes. And then I was able to work with some cool salamanders up in Santa Cruz and go through caves looking for salamanders. So I think having that mentorship is really, really important, and like giving other people opportunities to help you. So collaborate with people who are less experienced than you, things like that. So having that mentor as a professor, he taught me how to do research, and we all learned with other students. And so mentorship is really good. It was Barry Sinervo at UC Santa Cruz. And also in grad school, I had a really great advisor who just, had a good sense of humor and, just kind of taught us how to work well in the field and plan and questioned us and things like that. That was Rulon Clark at SDSU. And then working with Brad Hollingsworth now, he was, a great mentor when I volunteered, and now even more. So the things I like about Brad is that he really takes the time to like explain things, and he always questions me, which is good. I think it's a good mentorship. If I send him an email with an idea, he'll question it, or if I ask him for feedback, he gives really good feedback. So I think things like that, just putting in the time to um, get help from others. So as the mentee, that's great. I was really lucky, and now I'm trying to pay it forward because we have the San Diego Foundation funded us to have some interns. So we're going to have 2 interns, one working on frogs and one working on collections this summer that I'm going to be in charge of. So doing those things like that really help to contribute back, and I like doing that.
That's wonderful. They're going to be in great hands with you, Frank. I know you definitely have a passion for this, and
Thanks.
we could hear it. We could hear the passion and enthusiasm you have for the department and for the specimens that are in the museum or like even out in the field in research. So they're going to be in great hands. They're going to have an awesome mentor with you.
Thanks,
On
Hector.
that kind of note as well, was there a significant life event that you could kind of look back? I'm thinking of young Frank with all the snakes that pet snakes that he had, or as you were growing up, is there a life event that kind of triggered the thought, oh yeah, I want to dedicate my life to conservation, or I want to dedicate my life to this topic of conserving either the environment or the species that live out there? Was there
Yeah.
such a thing that maybe inspired you?
I think I was just really, I think it was a lot of luck. My mom got the newspaper every day, and I would read articles about environmental conservation and endangered species and things like that. So I think that's what I had the opportunity to be exposed to those resources. Um, so a lot of luck like that. And it wasn't, I think the thing that inspired me was working indoors in a lab when I was an undergrad. I knew I didn't want to do that. So I was working in a molecular biology lab, and I kind of realized quickly that that's what I don't want to do. Sometimes you realize what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I always liked environmental things. So, and then was able to get that experience. So I think just luckily getting that hands-on experience where I was able to work, volunteer in a herpetology lab on projects and collect data, starting to collect data, really inspired me. So it was kind of a accumulation of a bunch of experiences in college that really helped me figure it out. I was not one of the kids that wrote in my journal, I want to be a herpetologist when I grow up, and I'm gonna so I was a lost soul, and I kind of figured it out by trying things and figuring out what I don't like, and then figuring out what I could tolerate. So
That's
and I
awesome.
mean, I love it. So yeah.
That's great. And just kind of thinking about that, it's just one of those, it just brings a smile to my face. I can see you going like, you know what, yeah, I tried it. I'm going to move on and try something different.
Mhm.
And here we are now. Lucky to have you at the museum
Yeah.
with us. Is there a wish list? I know one of the things that we like to ask our researchers and our staff at the museum when they're talking about their department is there a wish list that you have for the department, Frank, of either a specimen, a project, or something that you have on your future wish list of I can't wait to either accomplish this,
Hmm.
take this on? What would that be for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I really like using technology to collect data. I think oftentimes, that 6 hour drive, it's fun for the first few times. And after a while, it starts to kind of wear on you. So thinking of things where we can still collect a lot of detailed data without having to be on site. So we actually got a grant, an internal grant within the museum through the EVF fund, which some of you might have heard of. And we're able to purchase audio acoustic loggers that you can program to record sounds on, you can program it how often you want to do it. So we put those out there December of last year, and we had them recording every night. We've had a lot of technical difficulties, so we're still trying to figure it out. But I'm working on kind of figuring all that out. And next field season, we're look at some really cool questions. We want to try to understand when the frogs start calling. Like, is it in December? Is it in January? Look at correlations with weather. Um, and also that's going to help us understand, when should start looking for eggs at other sites. So of the 10 sites, we surveyed 3 of them this year on a regular basis. So if we want to plan future surveys, we can look at those patterns and say, okay, they tend to start in January and then they totally completely stop calling by March. And the eggs were all found maybe 2 weeks after the start of males calling. So I'm really into like getting all this kind of like big data and looking at patterns. The challenge is figuring out what to do with that big data once you get it. So that's what one of the summer interns is going to help me figure out,
Yeah.
the remote
Wow.
monitoring with acoustics. So I think just projects like that where you can also collaborate with people who don't have a lot of training. So I'm hoping to get some volunteers also to help me analyze those frog calls. So they're going to listen to these 1-minute recordings and say whether there was a frog calling. And that's something that's really straightforward. And I love getting other people involved. I don't feel like we can do it all ourselves. So getting volunteers and students involved is always a fun part of it. Kind of getting back to what I was doing when I was undergrad, where I had the opportunity to help other people on their projects.
It's just it just screams fascinating work that's yet to come and exciting outlook of what's going to be happening in herpetology. So thank you so much for that, Frank. If you can believe it or not, folks, we're at the end of our session. Frank, this time flies all the time whenever we chat with our staff, because they have so much great stories to share and a lot of great interesting anecdotes to bring to these member meetups. So Frank, thank you so much for taking time to meet with us and our members here. We definitely have value and appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's been really fun to kind of slow down and reflect. And I was kind of nervous I was going to have enough time to fill everything in, but yeah, it was great.
Yeah, we always seem to run out of time because there's definitely a lot of more questions that I had, especially with the prompt Star Wars or Star Trek. There's an interesting story behind that. Maybe we'll bring Frank back and he'll share a little bit anecdotes about that.
Blog about it, yeah.
Yeah, or on our blog. But with that, we're gonna bring Emily back, invite her back to share a couple updates with everyone here. But Frank, again, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone.